Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Open Data, Pioneering Government Transparency. Our host today is Ari Hoffman, Socrata Senior Advisor, and he is joined today by Daniel Hoffman, Chief Innovation Officer at Montgomery County, Maryland. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's get started. Ari, take it away.
Oh, thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Lito. Thank you for all your help. And again, welcome everyone. My name is Ari Hoffman, and I am honored to host today's webinar with my good friend Daniel Hoffman from Montgomery County. I want to kick this off with just a brief introduction about my own professional background, and then I'm going to ask Dan to do the same, and then we'll jump into the webinar. I had the honor of serving as Deputy Comptroller of Budget and Public Affairs of New York City until the end of last year. I was responsible for overseeing the city's $70 billion plus budget and also spearheading the Big Apple's financial transparency initiatives. We, together with a wonderful team of people, developed the award-winning Checkbook NYC transparency site, and I now have the pleasure of serving as a senior advisor at Socrata and continuing my work on financial transparency. So that's just a word or two on my own background, and Dan, I want to welcome you and thank you for your time and participation, and just give us a brief overview of your professional background.
Thanks, Ari. Very happy to be here. Thank you guys for having me. So I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for Montgomery County, Maryland, a position that's been in existence for about 2 years now. I'm the first person to hold that position. Prior to that, I was an appointee at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, where I led a lot of the advanced application development business process improvement efforts. And prior to that, I was with a consultant with PricewaterhouseCoopers, where I oversaw teams during the financial crisis as the federal government stood up its Troubled Asset Relief Program. Prior to that, I worked in the public sector, standing up social service programs for the District of Columbia. And I'm happy to be here now as the Chief Innovation Officer and to be involved with a lot of different open data initiatives, from ones related to financial transparency to just general good government initiatives that engage residents.
That's great. Wow, what an amazing background, Dan. Again, thank you for being with us today. I really look forward to this conversation and look forward to the questions and participation of everyone on the webinar here with us. Before we jump in sort of to the meat of the webinar, I wanted to ask you about your title. I mean, I think it's becoming increasingly popular, but there may be some folks who have joined us who are not familiar with a title like Chief Innovation Officer, and you're serving as the Chief Innovation Officer of Montgomery County. What exactly does that mean? What are your primary responsibilities? Basically, what does a Chief Innovation Officer do?
So the Chief Innovation Officer in Montgomery County really, or the innovation program that I run, is meant to be the safe place to fail. It's the office of pilots, prototypes, and proof of concept projects that are sponsored by the county executive of Montgomery County. And for those of you who don't know, Montgomery County, there are lots of different Montgomery counties around the country. This Montgomery County happens to be just outside of D.C. We're about 1 million people. Our annual budget, including public schools, is about a $5 billion budget. So we're a pretty large urban suburban county just outside of a major metropolitan area, which gives us access to a lot of great resources. We've got a lot of great corporate citizens within Montgomery County. Marriott, Discovery Channel, Lockheed Martin, Choice Hotels, and a bunch of more that I could name, and they make great partners for the innovation program when we look to engage not only residents but our corporate community and our civic tech community in initiatives, whether they are financial transparency portals or whether they're kitchen incubators or whether they're autism technology for schools. I've got a little bit of everything in my portfolio, and the county executive has been lucky enough that he's given me a pretty wide berth to go after different projects that I feel are innovative. And we've defined innovation within Montgomery County as having three basic components. First off, it's got to be something that we're testing out in a lean, iterative manner. It's not something that we're throwing a lot of money at. It's not a problem where we're putting a lot of financial resources in it right up front. It's not your typical big government procurement type of effort, but these are projects where we're starting off small. We're starting off in a somewhat entrepreneurial manner to test out a solution. That being said, the second criteria is that we're looking for things that have the ability to scale. We still have to be good stewards of taxpayer resources, so they have to be something that could provide a return on investment to the county, whether that's a financial return on investment or whether that is a increased effectiveness in some of our key performance areas. The third criteria is that it has to be the things we test out in the innovation program have to be a little bit experimental. Have to have some degree of risk, and the county executive has allowed me to take on the safe place to fail mantra, and has said if I'm not failing from time to time, I'm probably not trying hard enough. So they give me a great space to work in, and I've got an interesting package of projects that I either directly oversee or just collaborate on with our departments, and some are technology focused, some have nothing to do with technology. We see technology as a tool in the toolbox, not necessarily the reason for being.
That's great. That was really helpful. Just one quick follow-up. Out of curiosity, inevitably you meet somebody new, and at some point in the conversation they ask, hey, what do you do? How do folks react when you say, I'm the Chief Innovation Officer of Montgomery County?
I typically get one of two responses. I either get they either think I'm the mobile app guy, that it's, oh, you're the Office of Technology, so I've got this new technology I want to sell you. Or, oh, you're the mobile app guy. What app have you created recently? Which it's much bigger than that. It's not that I don't have some mobile applications on my radar, but it's a lot bigger than that. The other typical response I get is just their eyes glaze over a little bit. Innovation has become a bit of a buzzword. It's definitely misused in some cases. We've tried to give it a definition, as I just discussed, but I think the reason why folks their eyes kind of glaze over a little bit is it's a bit foreign to have a government with what is in essence a research and development program. I'm kind of the R&D group for the county, so that's not typical, although it's becoming much more common. I've got a great peer network around the country of other chief innovation officers that I talk with very frequently, from San Francisco to Boston to Philadelphia to Chattanooga to Austin. There's a growing number of us and a growing number of jurisdictions that are starting to respect the fact that government has to find new ways to do things. We have to take smart, calculated risks from time to time.
That's great. That's great. Really wonderful that Montgomery County has a Chief Innovation Officer and you serve in that role. I want to move on to a real interesting area that I think, those of us who have worked and are working in government really think about a lot. In 2011, Vivek Kundra, the Obama administration's former Chief Information Officer, he wrote a somewhat controversial opinion piece in the New York Times. And I'm just going to read a couple sentences from that piece and then ask you to react. Governments around the world are wasting billions of dollars on unnecessary information technology. This problem has worsened in recent years because of what I call the IT Cartel. This powerful group of private contractors encourages reliance on inefficient software and hardware that is expensive to acquire and maintain. Speaking from my own perspective, I spent the past 5 years in New York City government, and I really witnessed firsthand the growing frustration that government has with technology vendors and projects that are behind schedule and over budget. What has been your experience, Dan, in Montgomery County? What can you tell us about your experience in this area dealing with the government technology vendor relationship?
That's a great question, and it's, honestly, it's one that the peer network I referred to of other chief innovation officers. It's something that comes up frequently in conversation among us. I wouldn't, although Mr. Kundra refers to it as the IT cartel. I don't know if I would call it an IT cartel as much as it is a bit of a procurement trap sometimes, especially in the public sector. I've had the luxury, or or maybe the trauma of having gone through significant IT procurement processes in multiple organizations, in the federal government, on the contractor side, and on the federal side. And when I was on the federal side, I was the contracting representative. I went through all the trainings. I knew the process backwards and forwards, as painful as it was. And I'm happy to say that Montgomery County, being a local jurisdiction, we are more flexible and we are a little more nimble. But a lot of times the big IT procurement projects, they struggle mainly because of the approach that's taken. I think that doesn't mean that smaller IT contractors are better than bigger IT contractors. I've had experience with a lot of larger ones who have partnered and collaborated with us on innovation projects, from big companies from IBM to smaller companies like Twilio and all the way in between. And what I've seen is that unless there is a true development partnership, especially for things that have not been done before, for the big commodity IT projects, an HR module or a finance module, those things are a little more straightforward. There's a little more best practice surrounding them, and they're not, I wouldn't deem them experimental. A lot of folks have those types of ERP systems. But with systems like we're developing around open data, and the whole approach to IT development that the civic tech community is really enabling, it's much more iterative. It's much more lean. And having a company, and in this case, Socrata, who worked with us on, has worked with us and it continues to work with us on a suite of different products, that partnership not only was collaborative between the vendor and the government, but it was also collaborative between the residents. So one of the things that we did for this was we brought in residents to help identify requirements.
You brought in actual residents who are not government employees from Montgomery County to help you guys out?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we are working with our Department of Technology Services and folks from OMB, we're doing this in a lot of different subject matter areas. So as we're developing these tools, we brought in the Taxpayers League. We brought in the civic associations and other groups that provided feedback, that provided input. And these are the same folks that come to our open data town halls. These are the same folks that come to our workshops on open data in various subject matter areas. It's not just finance. We have had workshops on public safety data. We've had workshops on transit data, specifically so those advocates can play a role in not only what data we should be publishing, but the types of interface layers, the types of visualizations that would help them better understand what we're trying to do.
That's amazing. Tell me a little more about the collaboration between Montgomery County and Socrata in terms of reaching out to residents, and also in terms of how that relationship and collaboration might be different from your typical vendor-government relationship.
I've never been, in all of the various IT procurement projects I've been on, I've never been in a situation where the public sector, in our case, the government, allowed a resident this significant of a degree of control over the requirements. And granted, at the end of the day, the buck stops with us. But the fact that early on we brought in folks from those various groups, and the way it worked was these are groups that I work with pretty frequently in my capacity. I organize panels of people. Department of Technology Services and Socrata made their folks available to sit and watch and observe, but really facilitators from Socrata walked our residents through questions about the tools as they're being developed and walking them through things that weren't quite complete. And that's different for us because it's a little bit risky. It is something that folks had a little bit of discomfort about, and we're showing them unfinished, unpolished products. And in government, we tend to be so risk averse sometimes that type of activity people like to stray away from. And I think it took both sides, Socrata and the county government, to really let go a little bit, kind of be a little bit more hands-off, allow folks to come in and talk to them. And the result was we got really good constructive feedback about the tool, and it's something that we're going to continue to do moving forward with all of our various portals and visualization tools, because it's a lot better for the government and the county executive to roll out a tool and have the community standing next to him when he does that, rather than the community standing in front of him, facing him, and looking at a tool that doesn't work for them.
So sort of fundamentally, philosophically speaking, you're saying that community engagement is a core component of government innovation as far as you guys are concerned.
Absolutely. Early on, when we were starting to put together the open data program for Montgomery County, and I was fortunate enough to step into a role where we already had a strong technology services team that was putting together an open data portal. And then the last year and a half, we've started to put together what we call our open data implementation plan. And my role in this is to really be somewhat the advocate for residents in what data sets to publish. And to do that, we had to meet them where they are. We had to give them opportunities to provide us feedback, and that feedback went directly into something that we created to prioritize the data that we were going to publish that would enable all of these different portals. So we put together something that, as far as we can tell, is a first-of-a-kind tool. It's our data prioritization, our open data scorecard, which is really our tool to prioritize what data is important. And the way it works is that our county stat group looks at various data sets from an internal perspective, the usefulness for measuring performance, the usefulness for efficiencies. I look at it from the external perspective. So I scored data sets relative to the residents' desire and interest in them. Would it be useful for civic engagement? Would it create economic opportunity? Would it make a department more accountable or responsive? Would it allow a business or resident to perform a process more efficiently? Every data set got a score, and then they were put into our inventory and then into our implementation plan. And what we heard consistently during those processes was several areas that always kind of bubbled to the top. Folks wanted to know what we were doing with their money. Folks wanted to know when the buses were going to arrive. Folks wanted to know what was happening in their neighborhood from a public safety perspective. Those were the primary areas, but there was a lot of other things that we heard that we never really thought of much before. Folks wanted to know where they could get various county services. Folks wanted to know what was in their kids' school lunch. Folks wanted to know, folks wanted maps. There's a lot of GIS data that we can make openly available. So all of that, fed directly from residents and into our implementation plan.
Amazing, amazing. So look, I suspect there are a lot of folks who are on this webinar who are, impressed with the great work that you guys are doing in Montgomery County, and are thinking about how they might be able to implement something like this locally. What recommendations do you have for other governments who are looking for new ways to engage their local communities and perhaps new ways to partner with technology vendors and to really rework that relationship?
I think there are two answers. There's two questions in there. The first one I would say is don't allow the open data process to become too politicized. You know, at the end of the day, go into it with a plan. We've had a great situation here in Montgomery County where we've had a supportive county council and a progressive county executive who have said, let's put together an inventory, let's put together a plan, and they've given the folks on the ground free rein to move forward and create progress, create action. And to do that, you know, everything from the open data town halls that I talked about to the scorecard, you know, it held departments accountable, and it held, it put residents in control of the types of tools that they wanted. So rather than just allowing, you know, whatever hot topic of the moment to decide what data we should be publishing, you know, we have an inventory and a plan that we can compare data sets in an apples to apples manner, rather than just haggling over which one is more popular at the moment. Some of my colleagues around the country are now having to suddenly publish a lot of data related to military equipment being transferred to their local police departments because of the activities happening in Ferguson. A very hot topic at the moment, very interesting, something the public should have, but should that bump things like transit data down the list? Should that bump other public safety down the list just because it's popular at the moment? You know, it's a question that everyone's kind of grappling with. And in terms of the types of relationships governments should be looking for with their vendors, you know, what I look for these days when I talk to my partners is I'm really looking more for some type of a partnership. I'm not looking at them as I try not to call them vendors. You know, I want to talk to the folks in their R&D groups. I want to talk about doing a bake-off, or what I call a bake-off, where come in, build out a prototype, show me a wireframe, show me click-throughs, show me something that's a little more tangible. I want vendors to compete and work with me on creating something, rather than spending so much of their time and my time working through a procurement process, which really just delays in a lot of cases. I mean, these are all rules put in place, you know, with good reason. We want to make sure that we operate in a fair and consistent manner for all of our vendors. But at the same time, you know, we're looking for ways to do that in a manner that gives us a better product at the end of the day. And that's really what residents and taxpayers want. They don't want us to engage in a multi-month process or multi-year process in some cases that makes things more expensive and less useful. They just want to find a way for us. They want us to get things done quickly. They want us to provide them better tools. So their priority is that, not a process. Their priority is the product. So anything that we can do to create a partnership that provides that is the better. And that's what we've done here with Socrata in Montgomery County.
You know, clearly, Dan, you are a trailblazer when it comes to innovation in government, and you've shared a lot of interesting practices, from open data town halls to true partnerships with technology private sector companies. I think you guys are really a case study for how to engage the public.
Thank you. Thank you. We've gotten good accolades on all these things, but it's always nice to hear. We've gotten, you know, a National Association of Counties Achievement Award for our for the data scoring process that I talked about. The Sunlight Foundation, you know, continually likes to point to us as a good example, and I think it's our job not to rest on our laurels and not to be complacent because of that. So I thank you, but at the same time, I know that we can't stop here.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, one of the fascinating things here, I think, is that we are at such an early stage of having chief innovation officers work at governments, work in governments, with governments, and the playbook hasn't been written yet. And, you know, to some extent, you're writing the playbook. So, you know, what an exciting place to be.
It is there, and it's been nice to have, you know, groups around. It's been nice to have groups around that we can work with and collaborate with, and being close to DC, that provides us a lot of different opportunities. I mentioned Sunlight Foundation, Socrata's got a strong presence here, but we also have all the different federal agencies that are undertaking their own open data projects and programs. And just yesterday, I was able to sit down with the open data folks from the federal GSA and the Federal Department of Transportation and the district, the Office of the Chief Technology, and the District of Columbia. And I wouldn't be able to do that if I weren't sitting just outside DC.
Yeah, Dan. You know, I felt that you know, being deputy controller in New York City was great because of the proximity that we had to so many startups and technology companies. But you know, clearly to be in the greater DC area seems to also have its advantages as well.
Absolutely, and I'm sure you experience the same thing in New York. You know, you're in the middle of so much and multiple jurisdictions right around you. So you've got the folks in Jersey just across the river, you've got Connecticut nearby, and you've got the state to work with there. So and a mayor that really put a lot of emphasis, or you did, and I'm sure still do, but you know, Mayor Bloomberg put a lot of emphasis on data, on performance, and that was, I think, evident when the NYC Open Checkbook app was created, which really did become an example for a lot of us.
Oh, I see we have a question here. Okay. So our question is, what kind of interaction are you seeing coming into government, or are you facilitating with the public proactively now that data is published? For example, do you see more conversations with the public happening outside of town halls, or within dial town halls of some sort? And this question comes from Steve Hammer.
I would say it's what we're seeing in Montgomery County and what we're trying to learn from are actually informed a lot by the recent trends in voter turnout. So we just had an election here, and you know, one of the lessons that we took from that election was that we need to do a better job engaging folks, getting residents engaged in not just the political process, but really the civic process. And it's tools like the ones that we're creating that we hope will do that move the conversation onto their terms, as opposed to you know, forcing them to, you know, watch county cable at 2 in the morning or show up at a county council work session in the middle of the day. You know, there are so many things that we're trying to do to get people engaged. And, you know, in-person town halls are nice. I'm glad that we did an open data town hall, and I think it was something that we had to do. But we're also trying to find ways to engage folks to get them involved and interested in what we're doing. And whether it's our financial transparency tools, or whether it's mobile applications or the social media outreach that we did around open data, those are the types of things that I feel that's where the conversation's starting to occur more. You know, I got 40 or 50 data set suggestions through my Twitter feed from the community. And whereas that may not sound a lot, but that's what we were trying to do. You know, we asked folks, we had a hashtag for it. We asked high school students. We did, you know, Socrata and myself did a road show to engage high school students on this.
I'm sorry, Dan, that is unbelievable and amazing. We're running short on time, and I see we have another question from our webinar participants that I wanted to share with you. And I was actually wondering this myself. What are the sources of funding for the innovation program in Montgomery County? And is it determined by project, or is there some multi-year funding stream in place for the great work that you do?
My funding all comes through the county's budget, so that's my budget is part of the county executive's office budget, but every project really is unique in some way. So, for example, our Smart America Challenge project with NIST and the White House and a lot of other private sector partners, everybody contributed something to what really was a kind of a public-private partnership project. In some cases, for example, the Autism Technology Project, some funding is provided by my budget, some funding is provided by the school's budget, and depending on the project and the level of involvement from departments and the private sector, it really varies from project to project. And in terms of multi-year, this is year 2. I think we've shown a fair amount of progress, and we've shown some success and momentum, in the various things that we've been able to achieve in the first couple of years. And the county executive's been great to keep us in his office, to keep us moving forward. He's been very supportive, and the county council has as well, in that they've approved my funding for 2 years in a row now, and hopefully it'll be a third.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Dan, I can't thank you enough on behalf of Socrata and the webinar participants. This has been a really fascinating conversation, learning about some of the amazing open data stuff that you guys are doing in Montgomery County. So thank you, thank you. We really do appreciate your time and guidance and really sharing your story with us. And Dan, before we sort of log out, I'll give you the last 30 seconds to say whatever you'd like.
Thank you very much, Ari. One of the things that I have benefited from greatly in my time as the Chief Innovation Officer is the collaboration with my different counterparts around the country. So I'm always happy to return the favor. So if anybody has any questions about what we talked about today, any of the projects that I've just mentioned in passing, they can either reach me through Twitter. It's at MoCo, M-O-C-O, Dan Hoffman, MoCo Dan Hoffman, or they can see all the projects that we're working on the website, montgomerycountymd.gov/innovate.
Excellent. Dan, thank you again so much, and thank you again for all the folks who joined us. And please join us in future Socrata webinars. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Take care.
Thanks, Ari. Thanks, Socrata.